I think for me, self-love is a verb, it's a practice. And I think that you have to do it every day, and you have to remind yourself consistently that you love yourself. And practicing self-love isn't just saying like I love myself, but it's also thinking about what you deserve in your life in terms of your experiences and people, and also thinking about, like what people are kind of bringing into my life. And so having kids question like the relationships they were in, if they were feeling really toxic, or the pressure that they felt, relieving pressure off of yourself, kind of lowering or kind of making your own expectations for yourself versus listening to other people. Those are all forms of self-love, but it's really about, I think the best way to kind of put it, especially for kids, is be your own best friend, right? Because kids, I mean, I talk to kids and I'm like, what does your best friend do for you? And they're like, they have my back. They always lift me up. They encourage me. When I make mistakes, they help me grow. And I was like, okay, cool. Now do that for you.
Welcome, pirates and all other viewers that are joining us from all over the world. Hello and welcome to our Pirates Talk with Donovan Taylor Hall. My name is Nevena Banov, and I'm going to lead through today's conversation together with Melinda Eriksson. I'm joining from Vienna, and I'm also a Moonshot Pirate. I'm also a high school student right now in my last year of school, and I'm super excited to have this talk with Donovan Taylor today. Donovan is a youth life coach who helps students transform the way they see themselves, their learning, and their world. He has become well known through his TikTok videos, where he interacts with his students in the kindest way you can imagine and teaches positive self-talk, growth mindset, and gratitude. And I'm super excited to talk with Donovan today.
I am so excited. I had to hide my face because I'm smiling so hard. So I know my cheeks are going to hurt after this talk, but I've gotten a chance to talk to so many really amazing people since my work got put online. But like working with kids and younger people in general is my passion. So I'm so excited to be like interviewed by you, and I can't wait to share a little bit about what this work is and what this process has been. So thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you. So go ahead, just share maybe a bit with our viewers what your work has been, and maybe also how it has evolved, how you have become so popular, and how it has changed over time.
All right, I'll try to do this as like succinct as possible. I didn't go the traditional teaching route. I started working in positive youth development programs. And so that's a lot of like after school stuff. And in the after school spaces, you don't have to think about academics as much, which is such a huge focus for kids. And so I really got to think about them more as individuals, and I got to know their personalities and see their character. But as a young person, I really struggled a lot with my self-image and how I treated myself. And I did a lot of the right things and still really struggled to figure out like how to like myself and how to want to be who I am. And so through my own personal discovery, I discovered and found tools that I could use for myself. And I was teaching kids. And so I said, I feel like kids should learn these things so they don't have to learn them later. And so I started to teach kids, and it kind of spiraled into this really big vision that I had of becoming like a public figure for kids, because I just think that there aren't enough people who are directly talking to kids about skills to build a positive relationship with yourself. And so I just got really lucky. I was teaching it at a school for like 3 years. They were letting me teach my own curriculum. And I said I was gonna like try to make a YouTube channel and try to kind of blow up. And I had no idea how that was gonna happen, but I did a TikTok surprisingly. And my students told me to do like dance videos, which I didn't do. There's a couple, but not too many. But I started recording the class because I wanted people to see what the work looked like and what we were talking about, and how these kids were talking about these bigger things like their core values and their desires and their wants for their life. And because it was online, I could do it in a sense that I didn't have to show the kids' faces, which was like a safety thing. And it worked, and people started to like really pay attention to the way I was talking to kids. And then a year after I made my TikTok, somebody on the Today Show found my work, and put me on the Today Show. And then I got to meet like a bunch of other really like awesome people in the field. And it's just been kind of skyrocketing since then. So right now I'm in the process of making a TV show, which I'm really excited about.
Wow, that's amazing.
I hope that was quick enough. I tried really. That's like 10 years. And when they did the Today Show, they were like, oh, he just started this mission. And I was like, no, I've been doing this since I was so young. And so I think I'm really excited about Moonshot Pirates because it's like this idea of wanting to do more and wanting to contribute and not having to wait until you're older to step into, you know, helping and contributing. But I also want to make sure that kids who are, you know, helping and putting themselves out into the world are also taking care of themselves. And so they're not, you know, burning themselves down for a cause. Like they deserve to have like the same experiences while also putting out good into the world. So that's really kind of my mission, is to equip kids to go out into the world and to deal with their struggles and to grow through them, you know?
Yeah, so when you start coaching or when you start equipping kids, what is your go-to tool that helps most of the children that you coach?
Growth mindset. And we talk about growth mindset a lot with academics, and it's great, but I like to think about growth mindset on a personal level. So growth mindset is this belief that through practice, time, and effort, you can get better at something. And I think working with kids who don't like themselves or don't have a positive image of themselves, to tell kids, you know, love yourself and to be positive, it doesn't really help, you know, and you need actual tools and growth mindset, knowing that I can get better. I may not be where I am yet, but I can get there through practice and time, whether it is learning a skill or like being kind to myself or learning to respect myself. And it makes it just feel more about growth. And so anytime I'm working with kids, no matter what the issue or what the thing it is that we're working on, growth mindset kind of is like the first thing I teach out of my 3 skills.
Wow, great. And when I watched your videos, I was so impressed how big your smile is. Even now you're smiling so wide. And I find that so encouraging. And so I wonder, where do you take your energy from? Because I can imagine that it takes a lot of energy to do all this youth work, but where do you get inspired from? What inspires you? Where do you get your energy from?
This is such a funny question, because I'm really having to re-examine my energy right now, because when I was with the kids, it's like they're a source of energy immediately. Like even on my toughest days, I would walk into class and the kids are there and it's like, okay, I can do this. But since I transitioned on to online work and doing more of this kind of stuff, I had to find new ways to take care of myself, because it is exhausting. And I have a lot of people reaching out to me and wanting to talk and connect, and it gets really tiring really quickly. And so I have to set really firm boundaries. And that's something I teach kids too, about like making sure I'm taking time for myself, making sure I have time alone, not feeling like I have to save or do everything, and really being kind of patient with myself, because it's taking so much energy and I am a very tired man. So I think but it's interesting. All the skills I teach kids are things that I had to learn for myself. So it's not like I picked a book and said, okay, this sounds like a good skill, like let's teach it to kids. It's things I have to use. And so even though this is a tough time, I'm learning a lot about boundary setting and making time for myself, which is something that kids should also learn, is what is my dedicated time to me, where I don't have any pressure or expectations from anyone. I can just be with myself. So I'm trying to figure out how to find there. I started running. There's another one too. I don't like it, but it gives me energy. That's my physical thing, but a lot of it is mental and emotional work.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I've got a few questions here. You already mentioned that your students were the one who got you to dance on TikTok, but there are questions here, for example, what got you to create a TikTok account in the first place?
Yeah, well, I didn't want to teach in a classroom. I think that there's a lot of issues with education, especially in America, that can do a lot of damage to kids. And so when I was in the classroom, even for 3 years, sometimes it felt like an uphill battle to like undo some of the harm that was happening to kids in the moment with grades and with academics and stuff. And so I always wanted to do like a TV show, like a Mr. Rogers back in the day, but now trying to figure out what does Mr. Rogers look like for kids now. And I put a lot of pressure on myself, and I was so worried, like, I don't know how I'm going to pull this off. And then my kids said, you should make a TikTok, because even though my TikTok is a lot of emotional stuff and it's really deep, it's like 10% of my work with kids. 90% of it is just us joking around and laughing and having a really good time, but you like don't see that as much. So they told me to make a TikTok. They said, you should do it. And I did. And if you go to my very first like 5 or 6 TikToks, it's nonsense. It's like memes and like me dancing and being silly. But it ended up being like the outlet for me. And it's not as big right now because I'm doing this other stuff, but it was, yeah, it was lucky. And I think when we were in quarantine, having teachers on TikTok who could show what their work looked like in so many different ways, and not just teachers, but youth advocates. One of my favorite people is named Miss Katie, and she does social emotional learning songs for younger kids, or Sam Dima, who works with like high school students. People started to see that there are people out there who are really doing a lot for kids and different and amazing and innovative ways and stuff. And I just got really lucky, you know, to that for some reason one of my videos caught people's attention, and now I'm like surrounded with this community that is doing this work, and it's amazing. Because who would have known TikTok, of all things, the thing that I waste hours on, ended up being something that like launched me into this whole new level.
Yeah, and I think that you're making TikTok a lot more better with your work.
You know, I used to get really upset with myself. I used to get really bummed because it was like, I would see all these TikToks accounts that, you know, were like blowing up and people were doing all these silly videos. And I was like, I don't really know if TikTok is the place for me to be doing this stuff. But I think that the community that has been built around the work is so passionate about it. And I feel like the power of moms right now is huge in my life, because they're lifting the work up in so many amazing ways. And I'm really grateful for it. I never would have thought that this is the way I would have gone, but I'm happy. And I feel lucky. It could be a lot worse at this point, you know?
Yeah, totally. And so when also you teach a lot about self-love and self-kindness, do you have any tips how we can implement self-love? Because I think that many people, also grown-ups, struggle with loving themselves.
Yeah. Well, we weren't taught how to do it. And I think that a lot of people assume that you should just know how. And I think it's really tough, especially when you have systems like education and work and stuff that are saying this is your value in the world. It's really tough to just have a positive relationship with yourself if you don't feel valued. And so I think for me, self-love is a verb, it's a practice. And I think that you have to do it every day, and you have to remind yourself consistently that you love yourself, and in really tough situations. So something that I was just talking to my friend about last night is understanding that practicing self-love isn't just saying like, I love myself, but it's also thinking about what you deserve in your life in terms of your experiences and people, and also thinking about, you know, like what people are kind of bringing into my life. And so having kids question like the relationships they were in, if they were feeling really toxic, or the pressure that they felt, relieving pressure off of yourself, kind of lowering or kind of making your own expectations for yourself versus listening to other people. Those are all forms of self-love, but it's really about, I think the best way to kind of put it, especially for kids, is be your own best friend, right? Because kids, I mean, I talk to kids and I'm like, you know, what does your best friend do for you? And they're like, you know, they have my back. They always lift me up. They encourage me. When I make mistakes, they help me grow. And I was like, okay, cool. Now do that for you, right? But it's tough. It's tough to do it. And it takes a lot of practice. I'm 32. I'll be 33 like in like a couple of months, I guess. And I still have to practice it because I had a lot of years where I did a lot of harm to myself. But I think that for me, it's a daily practice I come back to, you know?
Yeah. And do you have any specific daily practices that you do to practice self-love?
Yeah, so one of the things I liked about growth mindset that I learned was that we can train our brains, right? And so for a lot of my students who might think really negative thoughts about themselves, they may have been doing that for so long that they think that this is how I've always felt about myself, but it's not, right? And a lot of times it's a self-talk thing that they took, and maybe when they were like 9 or 10, started to tell themselves, and then it becomes how they view themselves. And so one trick that I do, and I wish I had my wallet, so I'm not going to run and get it, but I've showed it on a couple of my stories, is I wrote a note that said I love myself, as a way to remind myself that every time I open my wallet, I see it and I stop and I say in my head, I love myself 5 times. And it's a conditioning trick. And I started doing it and it didn't feel real at first. I kind of like thought it was like a little woo woo. I was like, this isn't going to work. But then after a couple of weeks of doing that, I started to kind of like just treat myself better. I remember like I made a joke in like a negative way about myself and immediately was like, that's not true. I don't know why I said that about myself. And I'd never done that before. I never stopped myself from being mean to myself. And so suddenly I started to see that it was showing up in like how I allowed people to treat me and how I set boundaries and stuff. So it became really integrated. So I think for people who are struggling with that, it's very important that you just come back to the practice of reminding yourself of what that looks like. So writing notes or something just to kind of jog your brain. When I'm in the shower, or if I'm brushing my teeth, or if I'm cooking, or I'm doing something where I can just kind of like zone out, I'll come back to that track of like, I love myself, I love myself. And I read it from a book called How to Love Yourself Like Your Life Depends on It. And it's been a huge tool for me. It's just really helped. And the power of thought is huge. It's so important. And I don't think we really recognize what it can do for us in terms of our own kind of healing and growing.
Yeah, our thoughts shape our reality.
Yeah.
Very true.
Melinda, do we have any questions from the audience?
Yeah, we do. I got this very cool question from Hari Sharnam. I hope I pronounced your name correctly. What's your top advice to teenagers transitioning from the kids' life to adulthood?
I think that it's kind of the same. I think it's kind of the same for all. And I think something that we do a lot is we treat adult problems as if they're more valid than kid problems. And so I think that we often talk to kids like, well, when you get older, it's going to get tougher and it's going to get harder. But like, y'all know how tough it is. Like you are being put, you have like an unpaid job. Like you go to school and don't get paid. Like it's unpaid labor, right? And no one even like talks about that. And so I think it's kind of the same thing where it's, you're going to go through tough stuff, you know, and the work that I do is not about taking away tough stuff from people. I can't change the world and make bad things not happen to kids and to people. But I think something that we're missing is, how do you treat yourself when you're growing? Like, how do you treat yourself during really tough times? Because a lot of people, as they really struggle, they take it out on themselves. And so my advice in my work with kids who are kind of going into adulthood is, you have to protect yourself. You have to take care of yourself, because no one else is going to push you to do that, you know, unless you're really lucky and have friends. But that's only a little bit that can really push you to take care of yourself. And so a lot of internal stuff happens when we're struggling. And I just try to help make sure that kids are showing up for themselves. So when they go through those tough things, when they're going through college or making major life decisions or looking at their partners or, you know, figuring out what they want from their lives, they're being kind to themselves during it, you know?
Yeah, that's absolutely incredible. I love the understanding. It's not always something you receive. I have a question. I have 4 little siblings, the youngest being a newborn. And I wanted to ask you a question, like, how do I be best role model for them? How do I support them in the best way? What would you?
You know, I think this is going to sound wild, so stay with me, but I think that you have to figure that out, you know, but I think that being a role model is showing them what the work looks like, you know, and I think something that really frustrates a lot of kids I work with is adults saying, do this, or we know what's best for you. And my work is a lot of like, I don't know what's best for you. You know, all I can do is give you the tools to go and figure that out. But I think even doing this work, from the little that I know you, Melinda, it's like you're already showing them about how to put out good and how to, like, you know, you're in your first year in high school, right? And you're like doing like a career thing right now, you know? So I think you're already being a really good role model, but I think offering them something that could be really helpful is just letting them know that unconditionally you love them and that you're there for them. I mean, you can be there for a young person in your life, like younger than you, and just let them know I'm here and you can talk to me. And maybe when they're struggling, not try to fix everything, but instead just listen to them and give them space to kind of talk it out. Let them know that you're someone that they can come to when they're struggling, and then let them, you know, grow, right? It's tough. When I first started working with kids, I was like, fix all their problems. Like everything that happened, I took it and I was like, I have to fix this, I have to fix this. But that's not youth empowerment. You know, instead it was like, I have to give them the tools to go out there and fix it themselves and be a safe space for them. So when they're struggling, they can come back and know that they're safe, you know? And so that would be my offer to anyone who is working with kids is to create safety for them. So they know that whatever they're going through, they can come to you, because it's such a difficult thing to go through something alone and feel like you can't talk to someone out of shame or fear. And lots of parents I work with they're like, well, I don't know why my kid wouldn't tell me this. Like, I don't know why they're embarrassed. And it's like, because they respect you and they don't know that it's safe to struggle, right? They don't know that it's safe to have low moments or to feel bad. And so in a lot of my videos and stuff, I'm open about how I feel, and I'm open about struggling and open about being afraid. And so these kids can hear this and say, oh, it's okay. Like, it's okay that I'm afraid of this thing I'm doing. I'm still going to do it, but I can acknowledge that it's scary, right?
So
that answers. Sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
I love that answer. I really did. Wow.
And they're lucky to have you. Just a little heads up.
So you're talking a lot about safety and opening up to create this safe space. How can we from ourselves open up and become more vulnerable? Because I think that oftentimes opening up is connected with a lot of fear and insecurity.
Yeah. I think we push vulnerability like it's this really cool thing, and vulnerability is really powerful, but it's not. I don't know, like when I tell kids like it's okay to cry, I talk about like when you're safe, you know, like, because if you start crying in front of your friends or in the middle of class, like people might make fun of you and stuff. And so I think with vulnerability, it's more about choosing who you open up to, right? You don't have to be vulnerable with everybody about everything. That's exhausting. And like, I just don't, it's tough. And I did that for a long time. I kind of call it like bleeding for the work, right? Where every rough thing that was happening, I opened up about. So now I have struggles that are just mine, that no one who follows me or follows my work knows that I'm going through, and that's okay. I don't have to be vulnerable with everything in my life. But I think it's really important to identify who are safe people, right? So we were just talking about, Melinda, it's like if your siblings are going to be vulnerable when they're older and they know that they can be safe with you, that they'll come to you and they can practice vulnerability and safety, and not just, you know, opening up every wound because we think that we need to be vulnerable and open all the time. I think one of my students just said to me the other day that the piece of advice that she hated the most was like, just be yourself. Because she's like, I can't not. Like, I am me. I can't not be myself no matter what's going on. And so when I think about vulnerability and authenticity and stuff, you are you. You are you, and you can't really change that. And so we don't have to share every part of ourselves to be valid and to be valued. And also, it's not safe. It's not safe to go around sharing deep personal things about yourself all the time, especially if you don't have people in your life who can hold space for that, you know?
Yeah, that's really freeing to hear that we don't have to be vulnerable all the time, but just having the space. And what does safety mean for you? Because you're talking a lot about this safe space. Could you define what would be a safe space?
Yeah, I think it looks different for a lot of people. And this is something going into this work I'm really trying to be aware of is I don't think I have the answers. I don't think that my method is the way. I think that I'm trying to help kids understand that you have to figure out what works for you. And being curious to understand that things may work differently for you in different ways. So when I think of safe space for my kids, it's just non-judgmental and conditional love. And it doesn't mean that I don't push them or have expectations for them. So if my kids are like, I just burned down 40 houses, I'm not going to be like, good for you. I'm so proud of you for honoring yourself, right? I'm not going to say that, but at the same time, even when my kids are struggling, they know that they can work it out with me and they can talk, and I'm not going to change how I feel about them because of something that they're going through. And so I think that the unconditional support is really important, especially when working with kids. But safety for me personally feels like I don't have to be on. I don't have to be like fixing or being positive, or like I can just be lazy or be like, just like a goofball, or, hang out and not feel that pressure. So that's like a new type of safety that I'm experiencing, because sometimes it feels like this, I can't get away from this work. And I have to, that boundary I was talking about earlier, I have to remember that I am separate from my work, and that at the end of the day, I need to be able to take my work off and leave it so I can have some space for myself. And there are some people in my life that don't understand that. And so it's difficult for them to provide that kind of safety for me. But for a lot of people in my life, I'm really lucky because they do create that safety of, I get to just be me with them,
Yeah, that's great.
Absolutely. Okay, I have another question from the chat. So from Collins, how do you help kids choose careers? Help them what to do with their lives?
I don't. I don't. And it's interesting because I used to put that pressure on myself. My first company I started was called Purposeful. And I was like, I'm going to help kids find their purpose. And I was like, I can't do that. That's so much pressure. Like, that's not a good business model, right? Like, every kid has to leave here with a purpose. I think what I do with kids instead to kind of help them figure that out, because you're also young in a really kind of exciting sense that there's a lot of experiences you haven't had. I found teaching through a random person saying work with kids, and I laughed at them. I was like, me, kids? I didn't think that would ever be my path. And I can't create those moments for kids, but I think something that I do teach that's connected to that is I ask my kids to identify and learn how to articulate their strengths, right? To understand what they bring to the table, so professional and personal strengths, to figure out what their core values are, like what really resonates deeply with you. So we have a lot of space around understanding things like fairness or things like perspective. And so I was working with a kid the other day, and we identified his character strengths, and it was like empathy and social intelligence and leadership and like communication. And I was like, dude, do you know how many jobs you would be so good at if you like apply these strengths? And so I think one thing that could be really helpful is this perspective of learning strengths and values, and then connecting that with like, what are things you care about? So for me, when I learned that communication and gratitude and positivity were like strengths of mine, I started to think about, well, sure, I could teach, but I can also do something really unique with this, because I have this unique combination of strengths that could really lend itself to being like a speaker or to being like a public figure and stuff. So I like to ask kids a lot, like, what do you have to offer? What do you care about? And what's important to you? And then if you can figure those things out, I think that you will find work that is meaningful to you. And also letting kids know that sometimes careers are not where you find your meaning in life. Sometimes your community or your hobbies or the passions, like not everybody has to go out and have this huge purpose. But I think that understanding like who you are as a person will help put you on that path to where you need to be,
Absolutely. Yeah.
And so when we find our own strengths and we choose, for example, a path for us, How can we approach parents and other role figures that are important for us when they disagree, for example, with our path?
Yeah, I mean, I think that that's really hard. I think it's really tough, especially as a young person who may not feel like a lot of power in your life. You have to, at the end of the day, kind of trust your gut and listen to it. And so a lot of the work I do with kids is helping them trust their gut. And people will have lots of reasons they'll tell you not to do something. And a lot of, especially parents, a lot of it's protection and safety. And it's not really serving the kids. It's just trying to kind of shield them. And I think one of my biggest goals is to create opportunities for kids to do what you're doing, right? To step into themselves and to be taken seriously, and to be shown that what you have to say and your experience matters, and you're the people who are going to be fixing all the problems that we're creating for you right now. And so I think, trust your gut and be open to feedback and growth, but stay true to yourself. And yeah, I was really lucky. My mom was so supportive. And I talk to some people and I hear that they have different experiences, and it's hard for me to empathize and understand, because I never knew what it felt like to not be able to go to my mom. I never knew what it felt like to be afraid to tell my mom I wanted to do something, or, explore a different part of myself. She was always like so gung-ho and excited for it. And that's not the experience for a lot of people. And so that's another reason why I try to show up for my kids that way, where I can be one voice that says, like, I hear you, I see you. And if they can have that experience when they're younger, you can recreate it for yourself. I can see myself, I can show up for myself the same way that this person showed up for me when I was younger,
Yeah.
Yeah.
And adults need to listen more. I'm so sick of adults talking down to kids, like, especially in America. These adults talk down to kids and then look at their behavior. Like, we're like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's so frustrating. Sorry.
No, it's okay. I was just about to ask, like, how was your childhood, your teachers? How were they? Were you let down by them? Did you have any amazing teacher?
I had two teachers. I had Mr. Barker and Miss Moyer. And Miss Moyer was my orchestra teacher from 6th till 12th grade. And so she was just, whether she wanted to be or not, she was just a huge part of my life. And both her and Mr. Barker held me accountable. And there was times where I messed up and I was acting out in a lot of ways because no one was putting boundaries on me. And I mean, they were two of the only adults in my life that were like, hey, like, you're messing up, right? Like, do better. And Mr. Barker was like he was just so funny, and he was really passionate about science, and he was like one of the only Black men that I had as a teacher. And it was really important for me at that age. I grew up in a predominantly white neighborhood. It was really important for me to look up to this man. And I had him for 2 years, and he taught 7th and 8th grade just like I did with my kids. And he just had a huge influence on me, just kind of showing up. But I never had any teachers talk to me the way that I talk to kids. But I read a book about famous people in all these different industries, like every industry you could think of. And so many people were like, this one time, this one teacher said this one thing to me, and I carried it with me my whole life. And I kept thinking, like, one time, like, that's it, that's all it took. And this is what you did. And so I put it on myself to do that, like, as much as possible. And that's one of the reasons I teach gratitude too, because I think one of the most powerful things that we could do for kids is thank them and appreciate them for who they are and what they bring to the table and how they impact people. They don't get, you all don't get that enough. It's not fair.
I got a question from the chat here from Marco. Like, he says, imagine every school had a Donovan, but what needs to change in society on a large scale, so we change the way young people grow?
I think we need to prioritize youth well-being. And I think that we need to stop just focusing on education for kids and really think about full development, because so many adults who like my work are people who have had to do it for themselves. And that's energy. It takes energy to undo the harm that was done to us and to figure out who you are. And since we're not given that in school, right, people have to do it in their 20s or their 30s or not at all. But that's energy, and and we need energy for bigger things right now. We need energy for bigger issues, and we think that we are, bulletproof, but in reality, like, it's not sustainable to keep doing the things that we're doing. And so I think we need to like make youth sacred, and I think that we need to lift youth up and to incorporate your voices and to give you more option and say and just treat you better. It makes me sad in a way that my work was highlighted the way it was, because it to me was like, I'm just being nice to kids, and I wish that more people did it. I also want to say this too, lots of teachers have been doing this work, and lots of teachers for years, right? Like before the growth mindset had a name, there were amazing teachers who were teaching growth mindset, and there were amazing teachers who were showing up for their kids. And I don't think I'm an outlier. I just think that I got a chance to show what it looks like. And so I don't ever say that teachers are not doing what they're supposed to do. My class is on personal life. So it's like, of course I know them, right? It's like you expect a math teacher to have this deep relationship with a student and they only see their math work, but I'm asking them about like their goals and like their strengths. So I got to know them on such a deeper level. So for me, it's like this work should supplement education. It's not about replacing it, but like we need to give space for this kind of, conversation.
Yeah, and implementing it into the curriculum.
And I don't know how to do that. But again, it sounds weird to say that, but once I figured out my strengths, I was like, I could try to do this, but that's not really what I'm good at or passionate about. And so I took my strengths and my values and made something that works for me. And so people will message me and say, how do I do what you did? And I'm like, don't. I'm not going to tell you like quit your job and start a TikTok, right? Because that may not work for you, but I just think I got really lucky in having an opportunity to kind of find something that fit me. But that came from a deeper understanding about what I had to offer and who I was.
Yeah. So you've already talked about one of your students who got the advice, just be yourself. And so I'm wondering, what has been the worst advice you got?
Just be positive. Just be happy, right? That's my least favorite thing. It's like, if a kid is like, my grandma's sick and I'm scared, like, what am I going to be like? Be positive, like, have fun, right? Like, live your life. Like, I just think that toxic positivity thing is really kind of rough. And when I saw Inside Out, the Pixar movie, I was so grateful because, we want to like say that feeling sad or angry is bad, but it's a part of life. And it's really more about what do you do with those emotions? And everything serves a purpose. All these emotions serve a purpose. Feeling positive feels better. It's pleasant, right? It feels better, but it doesn't mean that it's a better thing. And so I think that telling kids to just be positive when they're struggling, like I was like a young man, really depressed. And I would go to people and they're like, you got this, be positive, you're going to be great. And it didn't help anything. It just made me feel worse about being sad. I was like, I should be positive, but I had like all these awful things happen when I was younger. And I kept telling myself not to feel bad about those things. But what I realized is when I can kind of like talk about it and unpack it, I can release it because it doesn't go away,
Yeah. Melinda, do we have another question from the audience?
Yeah, we do. Okay, so from Collins, how do you guide kids back to the right track, say from a bad habit or an addiction or something?
I've never had to work with a kid around an addiction yet, but I know that that's something that I struggled with as a young person. And I think it's really important that people understand that that's like not what I do. And so part of my work with kids is if kids have stuff like mental health stuff or self-harm things, it's like, we need to get you the resources and support that you need. There are people out there who can hold space for this thing that you're going through in amazing ways. And just because I love this student doesn't mean that I'm the answer to everything. but it's really important to teach them to advocate for themselves. So in that moment, like, let's do some research, let's find some resources, let's talk to your parents, like, let's get you in the position to get help from a specialist who knows how to do this, because I can't do that. And that goes back to my own self-love thing. It sounds weird to say it that way, but I have to set boundaries with myself of I can't be everything for everyone, right? And so even people will say, can you tutor kids? I'm like, no, there's tutors, there's academic tutors, they're good at that, like, go find them, right? So I help kids specifically with building a positive self-image. And so in that situation, it was like, how do we build up care enough for myself to want to get the help? And sometimes it's really about kind of being there with them to get that help so they can, you know, feel better and get the support that they actually need. And it's a tough pill to swallow, to be like, I can't fix everything, but it's true, I can't.
That's great. Learn how to build boundaries for yourself and so forth.
Yeah.
What would you tell your younger self today?
I would tell him that I am sorry. I would apologize to him, and I would thank him for, oops, I'm almost getting emotional. I would thank him for being there for him, like being there for myself when I was younger, because I was really hard to ask for help, and I acted out in a lot of bad ways. Like, I had substance abuse issues, I stole from my friends, like I was really struggling, and I used to look back and be so hard on myself and be really ashamed of that time in my life. But now I look back and I just feel sad. I feel sad that I didn't get that support, and that I didn't have people fighting for me, and you know, that I hurt myself so much. And I would thank him too. The same thing I would offer to adults: thank and apologize. Thank kids and apologize to kids for harms, and just showed him respect, you know. Oof.
Yeah. Ooh, yeah.
Yeah.
You know?
Thank you for being so open and vulnerable.
Yeah, I felt safe. You created safety for me. Yeah, that's what it looks like.
Yeah.
So from looking back to looking forward, what is your vision for the world?
I just want kids to know who I am. And right now I'm doing a lot of work with adults, and it's great. Like, I'm so happy that the work is resonating with adults, but my dream is that kids is to be a truly public teacher. Like, kids choose me, because that's something when I bring it up to my students, it always like throws them off, where it's like, do you get to choose your teachers? And they're like, no. And I'm like, yeah, imagine what it would be like if you got to choose the people you learn from, right? And so I want to be someone that offers kids tools, because I just know that, especially when they're in middle school, like, you know, ages like 12 to 14, I think that there's so much like loneliness in that time, and there's so much like struggling alone. And I just didn't, when I was a kid, I didn't have anyone that I could turn to learn resources from, or to hear the things that I needed to hear. And so I don't care about becoming famous in the sense of like being a celebrity, but I look forward to the day where kids are excited and they see me and they're pumped, and they see me as like a hype person for them. Like that's my teacher. I love that guy, right? And I think because in that world, then kids have access to the work, and kids have access to the tools, and there's no gate that's stopping them from finding the work and taking care of themselves.
Yeah, amazing. Melinda, I think we have time for 1 or 2 more questions from the audience. So if there is any interesting question.
Okay. Well, if you could give kids 3 superpowers, what would they be?
Growth mindset, self-talk, and gratitude. They are absolute. It is wild because growth mindset transforms the way that you view learning and growth, right? Which is where a lot of people struggle, afraid to make mistakes, blaming themselves, basing their value in their grades, right? Self-talk changes how you see yourself. Like you said earlier, like your thoughts inform your reality. And so when you can be kind to yourself in a really grounded, positive way, right? Not just saying, I'm perfect, I'm amazing, I'm wonderful, I'm all these things I may not feel, but just being like really, really kind of grounded and growth oriented with your self-talk. And then gratitude transforms the way that you see your relationships, transforms the way that you see people. And those things have been superpowers for me, you know, but I think for each kid, I would want them to connect with their character strengths too and figure out what that looks like, because 3 skills for everyone may not work, you know, those skills and those powers may not work for all the kids. So, but if I could teach anyone, if I could teach kids or give them anything, those would be the 3 things I would do for sure.
Yeah.
Amazing.
And also another one from the chat, Marco. So tell us more about your TV show. What is it going to be about?
Well, it's interesting because when I did the Today Show, Hoda called me like the next Mr. Rogers, and I like don't sing and do puppets and stuff, and like I don't work with the little kids, and so everyone keeps being like, "Oh, you're gonna make like a Mr. Rogers?" I'm like, "No, I said Mr. Rogers because he was a youth advocate and he did it in a public entertainment kind of way." I'm kind of shifting right now, so I'm probably gonna do like a family educational entertainment show, but I'm also looking at different places, because when I was a kid, watching TV was the thing, but kids do different things now. And so I'm moving into Twitch and streaming video games because I'm really bad at them. And it's a great place to practice growth mindset and self-talk out loud, is right. Like not giving up, continuing to try different strategies, being kind to myself. Like, so I'm going to build my Twitch channel. So I'm really excited to see what happens with the show, because there's a lot of different possibilities for it. But I think the thing that's the most exciting to me is about building a community and doing this work connected to video games, because they're a huge learning opportunity for kids.
It's amazing, and all your plans really sound like big moonshots, which is really cool.
Yeah, when I heard about y'all, I was like, what? I remember asking, like, can I collaborate with you? Can I work with you? Because you're doing like what I want to do, and I think it's awesome. I think it's great. And it's like, if you're going to ask kids to have big dreams and big visions for themselves, you got to give them the tools to show up for themselves in big, amazing ways, you know?
Yeah, that's really cool. And so do you have any books? You've talked about one book about self-love. Do you have any other books or other resources that really helped you grow yourself?
I've read a lot. I'm obsessed with books. I've read a ton, but I think that a lot of books, I don't know, I think that one of the ways that we push this kind of work is very much like, this is the way. I know the way. When you read this book, you're going to do these 5 things and your life is going to be amazing. And it's like, okay, I think it's like pick and choose, you know. I think be open and be curious to what works for you. And because like one of the first books I read, I would not suggest anyone read anymore. And I'm not going to say which one because I don't want to be offensive. But when I was a young person, I was like, this is it. This is everything. This is going to change my life. And at that time, it did. Right. But as I got older and understood myself more, I've been diving into different kinds of work and learning about things like altruism. And so I think for me, it's, you know, you can learn from people, but learn from yourself and take what works for you and be curious around what works for you versus being judgmental. Right. Trying to get myself up at 6 o'clock in the morning, like all the Titans do, and to do an hour of meditation, and then, you know, like run for 30 minutes and then sit and do a play. Like that doesn't work for me. And I tried to force myself to do it for so long because so many people said do it. And I realized it wasn't working. And I had to like be curious instead of judging myself and blaming myself and say, okay, well, what does work from this? Can I take away from this and take away from this? And that's why everything I do with kids, I offer it. It's like, I'm not telling you, I'm offering it. Leave it or take it. Right? It's up to you. If it works with you, great. If it doesn't, leave it. Walk away from it. I'm trying to think of another book though, like, because I do love books. There's a guy named Brendan Bouchard who does personal development, and I really like his stuff. He has a book called Motivation Manifesto that was really big for me. It was kind of like my Bible at the time. And then, God, I know there's got to be another one. I'll have to think about this one.
Yeah.
It works, and it's different for each person. You know?
Yeah, we have a few minutes left, so if it comes up.
Love yourself like your life depends on it was really great though. that was probably the book that has stayed with me the most, because it was about self-love, but that's what I needed, you know. So figuring out what you need help on, and then finding the people who talk about those things can help you form your own kind of opinion and work around it.
Yeah, yeah. It's so amazing to listen to you, because oftentimes we feel like maybe this positivity it's all about being positive. And also when I watched your videos, I actually thought a bit that you're kind of teaching how to be positive, but it's so much more. And from this talk with you right now, I figured that it's actually just letting things go, letting things flow, and being open and being vulnerable. And that's so amazing. So really, thank you for that. It's really great.
Yeah, I'm not like an anti-positive person, okay? Like I am very positive, but I just think that there's a time and place for it, you know? And if you're struggling, and if you're a young person and you're really struggling and you feel alone and stuff, and you're telling yourself to be positive, like it's not necessarily fair. It's not fair to yourself. It's not beating yourself up for not being positive when you're struggling it's not kind. It's not kind to do to yourself. And so, you know, for anyone who's listening, I do coaching with kids, and it's like my favorite thing right now. And you can stay connected with me, but also on social media and stuff, I talk with a lot of young people about these feelings and they have. And a lot of times they'll ask me, like, they'll say, these bad things are happening in my life. How can I be positive? And I'm like, are you okay? Like, that's like, can we like step away from where we want to be and just talk about where we're at right now instead? And so it is good positivity has a lot of good to offer, and it is great to bring positivity in. I just don't want I don't want positivity to ever be something that feels like I have to be this if I'm not, you know?
Yeah, yeah. So if you could leave our viewers with one thing, one maybe quote or something, what would it be if you can tell them one more thing?
BYOBF. Be your own best friend. Do it. Create safety on the inside, right? Don't anchor your safety. My offer is leave it or take it. Don't anchor your safety to anything that's not you, right? Be safe with yourself wherever you go. If you build safety within you, no matter what's going on in your life, you have a safe space to come back to. But a lot of people create an unsafe space within themselves, right? And that's that self-talk and how they view themselves. And I think that it's really important to like build it. Because I bought like a little, I don't know what it's called, like it's like a cross stitch. And my cousin got it for me, and it says, "Bless this mess." And I hang it up, and I think about it as like I'm building a house inside myself, and I can retreat and be there and create safety for myself. But I think about that being in my house all the time, of like, this is my physical safety is within me, and I am safe where I go. And especially in a world that tries to take our safety away a lot, I think it's really important that we have the skills to come back to ourselves and take care of ourselves. And it's hard. And if you don't know how to do it, don't beat yourself up, because we're not taught. We have not been taught this, right? So I don't, people are just like, whoa, this makes sense. I should have known this earlier. I'm like, why would you have known it?
Yeah.
Yeah, so start it easy.
Yeah, go small step, right? You wake up in the day and say, today I'm working on loving myself. Cool, work on it, right? And then tomorrow show up again. This is so cool that y'all are doing this, and that you were like interviewing and meeting these people and having these conversations in spaces. And so I'm just really grateful for Moonshot Pirates for lifting y'all up and giving you the place to like really show up and really step into yourself. This is so cool. I wish I would have had this opportunity when I was a young person.
Thank you so much. And Donovan, really, the gratefulness is also on our side. Thank you so much for taking this time, for having this deep conversation, for giving us so many insights, and for really like freeing us up from this thinking of you have to be positive all the time, that it's really free. So if people want to connect with you, how can they connect with you the best way?
Okay, so my like handle is Dono Friend, because my name is Donovan and it's like Dono Friend. And somehow no one has used that name before. And so if you type Dono Friend into Google, you will find all my stuff. But on Instagram, YouTube, Twitch, like every social media, TikTok, it's Dono Friend, DONOFRIEND. And I also, if you're a young person and you're listening to this and you want to connect, please reach out. I would love to hear from you. Safety is really important, so I have channels that I do it through, but like especially on my Instagram, it's a public page. And I'm not getting to talk to enough kids right now. And so that's like a gift to me as well, of like reaching out and hearing your feedback and connecting. So please feel free to.
That is amazing. Thank you. And I'm sure that with your new format, you will reach millions of children. I'm really sure about that. With your smile, it will be really amazing. And I'm really looking forward to that.
As soon as I leave, I'm gonna be like, I'm telling you, when I get in this space, it's like, it doesn't matter. Like, I don't need energy. It's like you all helped me find it, and it feels like flow. So thank you so much for this opportunity. Yeah. And y'all were great, wonderful, wonderful hosts. Appreciate it.
Thank you, and thank you so much to the viewers. And we really hope to see you soon in another talk in the future. And if you're interested, just go visit moonshotpirates.com to get more information. And once again, thank you, Donovan. Thank you, Melinda, for co-hosting this. That was really amazing with you. And so see you all soon. Bye.
Bye.